So we have more sad news following the sad news that we just shared. So this past week, last Saturday, Mac Miller passed away. He overdosed. We've lost a lot of celebrities this year, specifically to overdoses, and how long is it going to take for people to realize that it's an issue and that it's going to stop?
I don't know.
So, David, what do you have to say about all this? Obviously, Mac Miller, great musician. He's made some great hits of our time.
I love Mac Miller. I probably got to know Mac Miller in like 2009, I think, which is pretty early on. I don't know if he was making music around that time period. But what's your favorite song by him? Because I have a pick that I have for my favorite song, but I'm curious what your opinion is.
My favorite songs, I don't know a lot of his new stuff. Like the album that he released a week before his death.
Right.
I know none of that album. My favorite song from him is probably Knock Knock.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I love that
That's
song.
That's a good song. Mine is probably actually Frick Park Market, which is from Blue Slide Park. It's an older song. I mean, not the oldest, but it's one of his first albums that he has on Spotify.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I've always loved that song, but Blue Slide Park, I didn't know this, but is actually the same as Frick Park. It's an actual place in Pittsburgh.
Oh.
And for this funeral, they're actually going to hold the vigil at that park.
Do you know when that vigil is?
It was actually on Tuesday, September 11th.
Okay, so it
already already happened.
Yeah.
Did I just
Any word on how it
went? I think that people just gathered together and got to reminisce on the songs and enjoyed and got to reflect on the life of somebody who was very important to him and to, many people.
He was so young, though.
He was so young.
So we had some responses. Chance the Rapper, I believe he tweeted out that he doesn't know what to say about Mac. He took him on the second tour ever. And obviously they kind of worked together, helping. Mac kind of helped Chance launch the career. And everybody was pretty heartbroken over this whole thing. And then Childish Gambino, Donald Glover, also basically stopped his show in Chicago to talk about Mac.
It's kind of funny when Donald Glover talks about him in this concert, he's saying he's like the sweetest guy, and if you read Chance the Rapper's tweet, he also uses the word sweet. Like everyone's using him to be the sweetest guy that there ever was. That's the term that they're using for him.
Everybody had respect for this guy. That's the interesting part. Everybody respected this guy. Everybody liked this guy.
But can you name one other rapper that people consider tough and also consider sweet?
Not at all. And can you name another rapper that doesn't really have beef in the game?
That's a good point.
I can't. Mac doesn't, at least from what we know.
Right.
I don't know. Everybody was pretty hurt by this. And even if he did have an enemy out there, I'm sure that enemy feels for Mac as well. It's just a bad situation. It really is. It's an issue. So then Post Malone also commented on it. He basically said that he was an incredible person, changed so many lives, had so much love in your heart. I agree. Everybody thought that this guy was sweet and sincere.
Yeah, I think I also saw something else about Post Malone saying that Mac at one point asked him to do an album with him. And, he was just pushing it off because things got busy. And now he's like, man, I really wish I would have jumped on that.
I did know that. I totally heard about that a little bit. I heard about a potential album happening between those two early on because obviously I've been a Post Malone fan for a bit now.
Right.
And it's just not going to happen now. And it was just unfortunate. I hope potentially, how kind of Drake took Michael Jackson's sound bit for his new album. I hope Post Malone kind of gets a hold of some of Mac Miller's sound bits. obviously Mac
could
Miller
see that.
has recorded things that he hasn't released yet.
I don't think Post Malone will be the only one looking to do that.
Not
either.
at all. I think a lot of people are. And obviously right now this is a time of mourning. They're not focused on the business aspect of it yet, but I think eventually that's going to happen.
They want to use the art that he created during his lifetime.
Exactly. So the last person that responded was Ariana Grande. She basically said, "You are my dearest friend. I'm so sorry I couldn't fix or take away your pain. I really wanted to. The kindest, sweetest soul with the demons he never deserved. I hope you're okay now. Rest." So I actually have a very interesting take on all this. A lot of people basically gave her the heat and said that this was her fault.
Yes.
This was not her fault. I think that's ridiculous to say. They've been broken up for a while now. And the reason she broke up with him was because he wasn't. But still, the reason she broke up with him was because he couldn't keep his eggs in a row. He couldn't keep his goose.
That's exactly what she
said
said at the time.
He was all over the place, and it appeared to everybody that he was sober, right? And that's what a lot of these celebrities are doing. Look at Demi Lovato. Everybody thought she was sober. Yeah, she came out with that song "Sober," which basically said, "Hey, she wasn't," but everybody ignored it. And obviously these celebrities kind of appear sober and then they're not, and things happen. I don't think Ariana's to blame for Mac Miller's overdose. I just don't.
I think Ariana was victimized, honestly, by Mac Miller in the end and felt pressured into some abusive behaviors from him because of his abuse with drugs. And I think that as soon as he died and all these people started coming at her, she had no idea what to do. She was heartbroken.
Yeah, anybody would be. If anybody had an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend that does something like that, that's heartbreaking.
Right.
It doesn't matter how long it's been since you've dated that person. And I felt like she was forced to create a tweet or whatever kind of response she had here.
Right.
She was forced to say this.
This
and
response that you just read was like yesterday or today. This was very recent, after a week of him being of his passing. And there was 3 days before she made any response at all. And at that point, she had released a picture just that she took of him, maybe in a park, sitting in the grass looking up. That actually became one of the second most liked picture on Instagram, I think, which is
really, I did not know that.
Yeah.
My whole thing is she did not deserve it. And she didn't deserve the heat. And I genuinely do think she thinks he's the sweetest soul. And I think she loved him, and she just had to end it because he wasn't sober. So,
R.I.P. Mac Miller.
His music will live on.
To it.
His music will live on.
Love your music. Love your personality. Great guy.